Alright, welcome back to another Tabletop Live video. Today I'm going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into my list, but more how it's evolved through the meta and what I've changed and what I looked at during the meta and going to tournaments and how I responded to that to be successful with my space rules. We're going to be looking at the different units that I considered, how the list changed depending on the meta, because right now the meta is really bumpy. There's a lot of things changing constantly every 2 months, and it's going to keep being like that for a few more months until we have all the codices out. So I thought it'd be fun just to talk about how I went through the process and getting ready for my tournaments. And yeah, make sure you like and subscribe, share with your friends if you're enjoying this content, and make sure to leave some feedback in the comments. Let us know how we can improve these videos and what else you want to hear from that. But let's get into it. Alright, so if you haven't seen the previous video of when I created my Space Rules Successor chapter, my list, go and watch that. It'll be helpful because there will be a lot of things in this video that I won't go fully into because I did in that video. One thing I will cover is the combo that my list is based around. So I went Space Rules Successors because I wanted to do Whirlwind of Rage as one of my traits, which gives me an additional hit on a 6, and a modified hit roll of a 6 in combat. And then my Space Rule Super Doctrine, the benefit that I get for being in my preferred doctrine is Savage Fury, which also gives me an additional hit roll on a modified 6. So 6s give me 2 additional, so my dice get crazy if I roll well. I have a lot of sources for reroll hits, like I explained in my first video. And then Born Heroes gives me my +1 hit. So that's the combo that my list is based around. I've had a lot of fun using it. And if you ever try it out, just let me know how well you roll the 6s, because when you do, it gets crazy. But this is what the old list was, right? I had my my Chapter Master, my Librarian, my Primaris, Chaplain. Those have not changed, barely. I had my Blood Claws, my Incursors for deploying. I had my 2 Redemptors for my heavy hitters. I had my Wolf Guard, and then I had a squad of Wolfen with Thunderhammers for dealing with things like Mortarion and Plagueburst Crawlers, because those were the meta back then. I had my Sky Claws for trading and pushing up onto objectives, and my Land Speeder Storms to get me engage and secondary points. But since then, I really struggled with the Drukari meta, because I think everyone has struggled with the Drukari meta. But my list was built around trading and being really points efficient. So I had my Skyclaws that were 100 points, my Wolfguard 140 points, just units that trade really efficiently up, and being able to play the mission really, really well. And I was the best on the block with that style of playing, right? And then Drukari came around and they just whooped me with the whole MSU trading style. Their 80-point units destroyed my 140-point units. Their 50-point units would wreck my 100-point units. Like, I couldn't compete on the trading. I couldn't do a 1-on-1 trading like I could with most other armies. I would have to dedicate 1 or 2 units to kill one of them because they were surprisingly tanky in combat, especially with the witches and the 4-up invuln, or having to send 2 units to charge Incubi in case they made one of them fight last. They didn't have durability, but you had to overcommit to kill them, which was a problem, right? I'm already trading 2 units for 1, especially when their 1 unit is cheaper than mine. Their flamers were really efficient into me, with the +1 of wound, so they're wounding my entire army on 3s or 5s. The 2 damage was really efficient. As soon as I fell asleep, it went straight through. The Dark Lances would go straight through my Redemptors because I didn't have an invuln, because I don't do Psychic Fortress. I do take Stormcaller, so that sometimes I have a 6-up save. But their profiles were great into me, and that was causing me a lot of issues. And then I had units in my army like my Wolfen, who could kill Mortarion in one go, but like, I'm charging Thunderhammers that get like 20-something hits to kill 1-wound models. Like, they were no longer necessary. They were overkill, and they just weren't efficient. And on top of that, they're 4-up armor, 4-up invuln. Like, one of those flamers hits them with a +1 of wound when they're on 4s, like they die. So it was not great. So what I did is I asked my friend Arn and Brad to show me the ropes with the Drukari, and they played a couple games with me, and they absolutely destroyed me. Like, it wasn't even close, any of the games I played against either of them. And what I learned was I couldn't pop raiders efficiently to then charge the stuff inside. So my 2 Redemptors, like, they could kill a raider each if I rolled well on the plasma. So I was maybe killing 1, hopefully 2, But when you have 6 raiders across you, like that's 3 turns of killing raiders before I can kill the stuff inside. So that wasn't great. And the lack of firepower meant my opponent could just move the raiders out. Like, you can put the raiders in front of me, I'm gonna kill 1, maybe 2, but like you're in an optimal position, and like that was too oppressive into me. I also struggled to charge in because I can only shut off Overwatch with my psychic power, Murderous Hurricane. But because the racks are inside a raider and I pop the raider, my opponent then knows already where I ended my movement phase, so he can disembark into line of sight if I'm behind the wall, in a position where they can overwatch. So I was really struggling with that aspect as well. So overall, I didn't have the tools to deal with Drukari, and it was very obvious from my games. So the first change that I made was put in more guns. I took out the Wolfen, because I don't need 20 something damage to kill 1 wound models. I needed volume of fire at a very specific profile. I needed to hurt raiders as well as infantry, and the best profile for that was either strength 6 or strength 7. Funny enough, volkites, everyone, it was the new hotness, Death Guard were running them, and they're not as good in Marines, but they're still pretty good. I mean, actually, Iron Hands run them really, really good. I'll try and get my friend Nazim to do a video on his Volkite Dread in Iron Hands because it's ridiculous. But as Space Wolves, it was okay. It was strength 6, give him Chapter Master reroll, spend a CP for Wisdom of the Ancients to give him reroll once the wound. He can kill a transport completely on his own. He's wounding all the infantry on 2s. The AP doesn't matter because they have bad armor saves. The 2 damage is great, and then the mortals it does on 6s to wounds, in addition to the damage, was great against 1 wound models. So perfect profile to deal with the Drukari. Has a 5-up invuln, so if I spike, the Dark Lances are going to struggle. You need to fire like 5 Dark Lances to try and kill it properly. So great little platform. The Drukari lacked the ability to kill because I'm -1 damage, so the Flamers don't hurt him too much. And as I said, the Dark Lances are inconsistent, especially because I have that invuln, unlike my Redemptors. And then the firepower was great for dealing with T3 1-wound models and T6 vehicles with a 4-up armor. So that was the first change I made. Then I dropped my Skyclaws because I no longer needed a good trading unit because I was never going to trade well if I played against Drukari. And I put this much effort into teching against Drukari because you're going to face him at a tournament. If you get lucky, you don't face him day 1 like I did. I didn't play a single Drukari day 1. You play 3 on day 2 in a row. My rounds 4, 5, and 6 were all Drukari. And like, obviously that's horrible, but you're gonna play them round 5 or round 6 at some point. So I needed to be ready. So I dropped the Skyclaws because I needed them for trading. It does hurt in other matchups, but I wasn't struggling as much in other matchups. So I put in the suppressors because the suppressors, again, strength 7, AP 1, 2 damage. Great at shooting at vehicles, so 2 squads of suppressors kill a raider. 9 shots per squad means I'm hurting units. Like, they hit on 4s when they move, but like I can spend keen senses, I can give them Chapter Master rerolls as ways to buff their weapons. But most importantly, 2 things. They shut off Overwatch against infantry if they hit. So those Flamers, I can split fire each suppressor into 3 different squads of racks, and now I can charge all 3 without getting Overwatch. That was super helpful. And then the other thing is they're 48-inch guns with a 12-inch move, so it's a 60-inch threat range. But they're 2 wound models, so the only way Drukari are going to kill him early on is firing Dark Lances at them. Because if I deploy like an idiot, the Flamers will reach them, but if I backline them, Flamers aren't going to kill him turn 1. So the only way you can kill him is with Dark Lances, and that means you're not firing Dark Lances into my Redemptors. So they're an annoying unit that the Drukari doesn't want to kill. It's like the Cyberwolf. You don't want to fire Dark Lance into a Cyberwolf. You don't want to fire Dark Lance into suppressors. Because I transhuman just to annoy you, and like now you wound me on force, like it sucks. So they were a great little unit and a great little piece of tech to counter the builds that we were seeing. So I went ahead and I tested the list. I went to an RTT and I was able to win the RTT. I think I played against Drukari. Can't remember. What I played against round 2 was Ad-Mech, and I struggled. So against the Ad-Mech, my opponent, Gabriel, very good player, he correctly identified that the only way I could kill his tanks with my Redemptor. So his last chickens popped my Redemptors. So all I've got now are strength 6 weapons shooting at T7 targets who have like a 2-up save when they're in cover. So now it's the opposite of Raiders. They're T7 instead of T6, so I went on 5s, and they have a 2-up armor in cover instead of a 4-up. So I wasn't ready for that profile. So what I did is I dropped a suppressor and a speeder and something else, a couple of upgrades somewhere for attack bikes. And although attack bikes have a very short range, against the Ad-Mech matchup, the Ad-Mech can't let the attack bikes live because they will pop a tank a turn really efficiently, and they move very fast to go tag things. So, and I can still fall back and shoot with the stratagem. So Ad-Mech have to kill the attack bikes. So I put them in there not only to help me kill those targets, but also to act as a bullet magnet. If I put those attack bikes in front of my Ad-Mech opponent, it is very likely that they're going to dedicate a lot of firepower, especially because they'll benefit from my psychic power for cover and the -1 to be hit, cloaked by the storm stratagem if I spend it. So there'll be a 2-up save, -1 to be hit, T5, 4 wounds each. Like, that's a tough profile to kill. And Ad-Mech are going to dedicate a lot of firepower into that, and that will buy me a turn that I need to advance through the open. In most terrain, like, there'll be a turn while I'm in the open, and Ad-Mech are really, really good at killing me in the open, especially now with their new codex. So having this little unit that they have to kill, because they really want to kill this unit, buys me that turn. Like, I'm sacrificing them to just advance forward and get my Wolf Guard in. So that's the second evolution of the list that I made. Then came around the FAQ. So before the FAQ, I went to the Rocket Top Rumble. I was a 6-round tournament, and I came in second, losing to Drukari in the last round. And right after that, the FAQ dropped. And what I learned from that tournament was, in the games that I win, I do really well on points because my list was designed to play the mission. I was getting engaged, I was getting Mouth of Moment, I was getting tabled in by 4 turns, but I had loads of points on the board. And then the matchups that I really struggled, I didn't have enough kill power. I didn't have enough ways to either damage my opponent, punish him for any mistakes, or just kill things and stress them out. Like, I didn't have kill power at range, and they got to dictate the pace of the game. So it was like this little cartoon. I traded off between playing the mission and kill power, and I learned that I need to focus a little less on playing the mission. Instead of scoring 15 or 14 points on engage, 12 points on engage is fine, or 10 points on engage is fine if I'm going to win that round. If I'm scoring 15 on engage but I lose the game, it's useless. So I needed to start trading playing the mission for kill power. Other things that happened were the Flamers aren't overcharged anymore, so they're no longer 2 damage, which is great. Maybe Wolfen are back, I don't know. I need to test it out. Another thing that got changed was charging now gives you now a fight first ability, meaning I don't get to get charged, heroic, Armor of Russ, and then hit you with all the units that are in combat before you get to activate. Now it means you charge in, you have fight first, I heroic, make you fight last, your fight first, my fight last cancel out, so you count as not having charge for purpose of activations. I get to hit you first with 1 unit. Normally it's enough, like either Redemptor or the Wolf Guard hitting you first, normally it's enough. But what this helps in is units that had fight first already, like Slanesh and Witches, before they charge, I heroic, make you fight last, they have fight first, it cancels out, but then they count as having charge, so they still activate first. Now, no matter how many fight first, either from your faction rules or charging, they get cancelled out by Armor of Russ, and I get to hit you first. So that's going to help against Witches, which I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of. The fight last is still the same. If I charge in, I make you fight last, you can't interrupt, so that's still great offensively. Defensively is a bit of a side grade. I don't get to hit you up with everything, but now I get to hit more types of units. And then the secondary changes, I haven't really looked into them. I think I'm going to stick to the same ones: Banners, Engage, and Oath of Moment, or mission-specific ones that I really like. Check out the first video that I made about the space rules of how I look at secondaries and which ones I go for. The new Deploy Scramblers is kind of interesting. I don't have the units. Like, if I had the Skyclaws, that would be a cool one to use, especially while they're moving around and doing actions, because they move 12 inches and fly. But yeah, secondaries, I haven't focused on it too much just yet. And here is the new list after the FAQ and the list I'm taking to the Albany, Georgia Triple Threat GT at the Cool Place. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you know, the chapter name that we came up with was the Varagir. I think I mentioned it in that little hobby interview that I did with Brad. So, the new list. Characters are exactly the same. Primaris Chaplain, I switched out Mantra Strength for... it's wrong here. I have Canticle of Hate, not Litany of Faith. I have Catechism of Fire. For the +1 to wound and shooting, it helps the volkite pop raiders a little more efficiently and just pump a little bit more damage in the shooting. Just because normally when I went into combat, either I do reroll hits and +2 to charge. I didn't need him to be flat 4 damage most of the time. But yeah, so tiny little change there. Blood Claws, Incursors, Redemptors. I dropped the pods on the top. Relic Contemptor. I dropped the Cyclone Missile Launcher on top for points, because I needed them further down the list. 3 Wolf Guard. Never leave home without them. Cyber Wolf. And here's the new stuff. 2 squads of Longfangs, so Devastators, with 3 Grav, 1 Multi-Melta, and a Cherub each, in a drop pod. So, I trade the Suppressors and the Attack Bikes for the Longfangs. The Grav gives me Rate of Fire, the Strength 5, 4 shots, high AP, 1 damage. So, great at killing 1-wound models, and just good high strength, 2 damage against 3 up armors. But with the 1 Multi-Melta in each squad, I can give the Signum from the pack leader, which gives them a ballistic skill of 2. So after they come in, they count as having moves, so they hit on 3s. But I can use the Cherub to shoot the Multi-Melta twice. So I can have 4 shots of Multi-Melta per squad. So that's 2 more shots than I did with the attack bikes. The attack bikes were 6. With these guys, I have 8 shots. And the cool thing is I can use Keen Senses on them so that the Multi-Melta hits on 2s. They ignore the modifiers for heavy weapons, forest, all that kind of stuff. So those Multi-Melta are really reliable. So the Chapter Master can advance up to them, give them a reroll 1s to hits. The Chaplain can advance and give them the +1 to wound if I don't do any litanies in the command phase for a CP. There's a lot of ways I can really buff their guns if I really need to. The Dreadnoughts can give reroll 1s to wound. It takes a lot of positioning, and I don't think I'll be fast enough to pull that off in games. I'll have to get a lot of practice, but I can get a lot of reliable damage out of them, and they just give me a little bit of kill power and punishment that I didn't have before. So yeah, as I was saying, I can, by the way, drop pods. I don't know how many of you have painted drop pods, but they suck for painting. They're just such big models, and like they're huge, so like they sit in the middle of the army, in the middle of the table. They have to look good. So I spend so much time painting my drop pod, and I hate it. 70-point model, and I use like forgeable decals on it and everything. But anyways, you drop this thing down, you pump out some shots, and then your opponent has to kill him, right? Like, you have to kill the Devastators. But I'm going to put the rest of my army around that drop pod. Everyone within cover, the Devastators will be -1 to be hit and in cover. Like, it's going to be pretty tough to kill. And I'm hoping there'll be enough target saturation that my opponent will struggle to pick what he wants to kill. I'm also hoping that the mind games will force him to push forward, screen, leave some gaps that I can charge through. Like, I'm hoping it will be disruptive enough to help me with those tougher matchups. Just because you don't see too many drop pods around, especially how they hurt the Ultramarines and the Salamanders, because they don't count as stationary when they come in anymore, so they all will be suffering the minus to hit. That will be very beneficial when people stop playing against drop pods. And on top of that, I'm hoping that people will rely on I'll just go tag the drop pod and then they can't shoot me. But if you go and tag my drop pod to be safe with my guns, like, I want to say to you, like, what guns? I've got like a couple guns here and there, like the Devastators you will have killed. But like, I want you as close to me as possible. And if you're charging my drop pod, you're getting closer to me. Now I know exactly how far you are. And if I do it properly, I will position my drop pod where for you to be at engagement range of it, you're going to have to be close to my army. Like, I'm hoping I can use some cool tech to mess with my opponent and see if I can bait him into coming closer. But we'll have to see how that plays in the actual tournament. As I said, secondaries, I'm not changing. This is the same as last time. I'm still going to go for the same secondaries. I think the list plays it very well. Dropping the drop pod into the middle for Oath of Moment will be nice. Engage. So if you ever use a drop pod and you drop it down, either put it in the middle for Oath of Moment or put it just over a line so that it will always score you engage. Don't drop it like in the middle of a line because it can't move once it comes down. Like, make sure it's scoring you engage for the rest of the game because no one's going to kill the drop pod. They're not going to dedicate anything to kill it. So drop it in a place where it's going to get you engaged. Or hold an objective. Like, use the doors to clip an objective. Make sure the drop pod is doing something for the rest of the game once it comes down because it's very, very useful. So the new playstyle for the Vara gears. It's having the guns in the drop pod means I can deploy more defensively. Before I found that I had to drop the attack bikes where they could shoot turn 1, or the Dreadnoughts had to expose themselves. Now I get to like deploy defensively knowing that I'm not going to shoot with those elements if I go first, but the drop pod will always be able to shoot and just cause enough havoc turn 1 to buy me a turn to advance. Turn 2, because I don't have Sky Claws, I'm not sure what I'm going to do to buy myself turn 2 before I charge turn 3. Maybe I find myself charging turn 2 full on. But maybe I use a Dreadnought and just use them really aggressively while my Wolf Guard survive for one more turn. That I'm going to have to figure out on the go as I'm playing in the games in the tournament. But yeah, turn 1, I'll be able to cause a little bit more damage than before. And turn 2, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. Again, lots of firepower now. I did some cool conversions, Primaris bodies with the Devastators, just to beef them up a little bit. I'm still painting them. Excuse the non-painted multi-melta. But yeah, again, the list is still strong if it goes first, because I'll be able to drop the drop pod, push up everything into the middle, and then charge early. But if I go second, I'm still scoring engage better, Oath of Moment, I'll be maxing out. And I'll have a little more control over the board, and Primary is sometimes easier to score late game if you're going second. My opponent is forced to do something before I do. So, doesn't play the mission as well as the first version, but I'm hoping the kill power will compensate for that. As I said, the weaknesses, I don't trade anymore as well as I used to. I am lacking the heavy hitters that I had with the Wolfen before, so I'm relying on the Dreadnoughts. And I'm seeing problems with pushing up turn 2 if my opponent is backlining. Maybe if they're backlining, they're not playing the mission, but with those tougher and faster armies, especially with the Ad-Mech, who get to just teleport a unit around and they have surprisingly fast mobility, I'm a little worried about how I'm going to push and put pressure on turn 2 when my Long Fangs die. Maybe I have to keep him in Deep Strike on turn 2. I'll have to wait and figure that out on the go. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions and feedback would be great. Make sure to like and subscribe, share with your friends, and we will let you know how the tournament goes. We're planning on doing a lot of filming, just like we did with last time. If you haven't seen that vlog of the Rocket Top Major, I did a lot of filming. Please go watch it. And yeah, catch you in the next one.